Fair. I think we'll start. Well, hello and good evening to those of you in New Zealand and Sydney and or Australia, I should say. And it's a good morning here in the UK. So talking this morning is myself, Amy Thomas. I focus on interim in-house tax recruitment here at Brewer Morris, who are traditionally a tax recruitment company. And then talking with me this morning is Dahlia Jennings.
Yeah, hi there. I focus again on the interim tax recruitment and have covered this market for, goodness, between about 15 and 20 years. So we've seen it through various different cycles.
We have. And then my other colleague, Richard Williamson.
Hi there. So I am the token South African or foreigner on this call, but I focus on the permanent side, specifically on the in-house market here at Brewer Morris.
Thank you. And then we're joined with Deb Brown from Armadillo.
Hi, many of you will know will be familiar with Armadillo as we assist Aussies and Kiwis moving to the UK. So I know I'm helping a lot of you already considering that option. So we have partnered with Brewer Morris for, gosh, almost, I think, 15 plus years, and they're our tax specialist for tax professionals making the move over to London.
Thanks, Deb. Well, as Dahlia has already alluded to, in terms of tenure in the market, between the two of us, we've got over 30 years of interim in-house tax recruitment experience. And over that time, we've both worked with numerous, haven't counted, but numerous tax professionals from Australia and New Zealand. Traditionally, people have typically moved over on, say, a Tier 5 visa for a 2-year period, but we've worked with quite a number of people who have come over on ancestry visas as well. However, since February 2020 and obviously COVID, we've not worked with such professionals. The people we were working with returned back to their native countries and no one came over that period. And to be honest, we've missed you all. So hence why we're putting together this session this morning, because within the UK and probably more specifically within the London tax market, tax professionals from Australia and New Zealand have really complemented the in-house tax teams amazingly well, and traditionally from an interim perspective. So with the long-awaited opening of all our countries, COVID restrictions disappearing, and also importantly what we're experiencing at the moment in terms of a booming tax jobs market in the UK, we decided to team up with Deb to run this webinar just to inform you all of what the tax jobs market looks like here in the UK, what you can expect from your time here, and just to give you that confidence in your decision making for relocation. Last week, you will have seen I emailed you all with just requesting some any points or questions that you wanted answering, and thank you to those who responded. But over the course of this morning, you will notice at the bottom of your screen a Q&A function, and please just put any questions into that function, and at the end of the session, we'll have an opportunity to answer them. So firstly, what is the current job flow like here? Well, I've already mentioned it's booming, and really quite specifically in the UK, in London. But what are the reasons behind this? So within the whole of the tax market, interim, permanent, in-house practice, the tax job flow is high, and it's been at this level for over 12 months. Now, the UK has seen in-house tax teams expand, so newly created roles created within those in-house tax teams. And this has come about from the increased complexity of tax, with pressure from tax authorities domestically and also internationally. So both of these issues has heightened the profile of the in-house tax team within a business, within FDs, CFOs, and they are now more accountable for tax payments through legislation such as the SAO. So the expansion in tax roles, we have seen it come through in the compliance and reporting on the corporate tax side, within VAT, which obviously is your GST, and in international tax. And those roles cover both compliance management and advisory duties. We've also seen an increased number of businesses hire, even if it's just one person within tax, to manage the tax affairs. We call those roles maybe greenfield roles, where there hasn't been a previous tax presence. And those positions are quite nicely varied, incorporating corporate tax, VAT, bit of employment taxes, and also possibly some transfer pricing as well. So now then, which industries are noticing this boom? And it has to be across all of them, to be honest. So within London, we are one of the financial services hubs globally. And we've got large banks, insurance companies who have really large tax teams here, and they are recruiting. But then there are also new companies within that sector who we're also seeing recruitment from, and they're in areas like cryptocurrencies and fintech. Fintech seems to be a really big area at the moment. But within our team, Dahlia, myself and Richard, over the last 6 months, we've recruited into the oil and gas sector, real estate, media companies, TV companies, pharmaceuticals, retail, engineering, even down to a supplier of water coolers and a company that manages data centers. Now, from our understanding, the in-house tax market in the UK is much larger than what you experience in Australia and New Zealand. And actually, from a UK perspective, this is more noticeable within London and then an area called the M4 corridor out to Reading, down to Surrey and up to Oxford. And in this southeast region, we have a lot of European headquartered businesses for US and Southeast Asian parented companies. So within that, you get a lot of international tax roles and also maybe more domestic UK tax positions. We obviously also have our large FTSE listed businesses as well. So really, it is quite easy within the UK to work in an in-house tax team within a brand that maybe is more recognisable. Now, in terms of the job opportunities themselves, the vacancies which are in highest demand in the UK are at an assistant manager and manager level. However, we do have numerous vacancies at senior manager, director, and head of tax levels also. Now, the traditional gap in the market that tax professionals from Australia and New Zealand have quite typically filled has been at the manager grade. Although within an in-house team, this is quite a large banding, but duties have typically included corporate tax compliance, reporting, and then providing tax advice for queries from the business. Now, I've talked a bit more on the interim side because that's where we have typically worked with people from Australia and New Zealand. But in terms of an interim assignment duration, those have typically been at a 3 months period minimum. We don't really recruit to anything under 3 months. But our roles have actually tended to last closer to 6 months, if not longer. And some roles we will have registered with us are for a defined period of time, for example, 9, 12 months, even up to 18 months. But what Dahlia and I have really found is that if a candidate and client are working really well together, then the contract tends to be extended and extended. just because of the good use of experience, and also just the nice pleasantness and rapport that's been built up. Now then, from an interim perspective, assignments are paid. Well, actually, since April 2021, we've seen an increased number of assignments go on a fixed term contract basis, which is also called an FTC. Now, this is whereby the interim candidate will join the payroll of the client and receive a prorated salary of the annualized salary. From this, the candidate will also receive the same benefits that permanent employees receive from day one. And that will be things such as holiday pay, but also areas like private medical health and also pension. Having said that, we do still see a large number of roles paid on a day rate basis, and these are typically on a PAYE arrangement, although umbrella companies can be used. So due to legislation change in the UK in April 2021 and the enforcement of a clause called IR35, day rate roles are not typically paid any longer through a personal services company, which is also called a limited company. And as Deb will know, typically people from Australia and New Zealand who came over on an interim contract would set up a personal services company, but that's just not really feasible any longer. But from a PAYE arrangement, a proportion of the rate is put to one side and is accrued as holiday pay. Also under an interim assignment, the candidate will submit a timesheet on a weekly basis, have that authorised and then paid 1 week in arrears. Now, obviously, I've talked a lot about the interim market because that's where we have traditionally seen the sort of involvement of tax professionals from Australia and New Zealand. But also we have seen people come over on ancestry visas and therefore move into permanent roles. And Richard, my colleague who focuses on the permanent side, is just going to give a bit more information around that.
Thanks, Amy. So as a quick background, I moved from South Africa to London about 4.5 years ago and originally worked on the Big Four desk here at Brewer Morris. But as I said early on, I now focus on the permanent in-house desk. I have successfully helped many international professionals settle here, so I know the ins and outs of moving to a new country, personally speaking as well. And some of the benefits of looking at a permanent opportunity, is the ability to integrate yourself into a business for the long term, and also to potentially gain this sponsorship if you require. As Amy has pointed out, the market is as buoyant as ever, and there's an ongoing war on talent. So many clients are looking at international professionals who are eager to join the in-house teams, who already have the foundation tax knowledge, and who are keen to get up to speed on the UK tax regime. Clients who have previously recruited Antipodean talent are generally more open to investing in foreign professionals. Now, currently, a candidate will usually have about 2 or 3 permanent positions that they're interviewing for. So your recruiter will be able to navigate you through these processes, ensuring that you are prepared for your interviews, as Dahlia will mention a bit later on. Manage the client's expectations, and also keep the different stages of interviews in line with others, so one doesn't sort of run ahead of the other. Previous sector experience is advantageous. However, it is not essential, especially at the assistant manager or manager grades. And the broad salary range that you can expect is around about 65,000 to 80,000 per annum, plus then benefits. Something to note as well is qualified tax professionals here in the UK have a standard notice period of about 3 months. So if you're able to start sooner, you will have an advantage over most UK applicants. Now, to compare and contrast, the Big Four accountancy firms continue to recruit international talent. These firms are excellent training grounds if one of your main motivators is to further your knowledge of the UK tax regime. We have seen the most activity in this area in M&A tax, international tax, transfer pricing, and asset management. Additionally, you can also be considered for a law firm if you have deals experience and if you have a law background.
Thank you, Richard. And something that Richard touched on sponsorship. And over my time of recruiting on the interim side with people from Australia and New Zealand who've typically been here on a tier 5 visa and then wanted to stay a bit longer, sponsorship has often come up as an area of conversation. Now, in the past, we have seen some candidates get sponsorship, either from when they've been in an interim role, it's worked out and they've been able to convert into a permanent position whereby that company has sponsored that person. Other companies may sponsor from the outset. Obviously, if you're on an ancestry visa, this isn't of a concern. What I would say is that it hasn't always been the norm to get sponsorship. It's not as easy as it may sound, but our experience is from 2 years ago and longer. And also the market was in a very different place then, whereas we're in a real sort of talent shortage, as Richard put it, war on talent. So a talent shortage in the UK. And so it's difficult to really see what might happen. It could be easy to assume that there will be more sponsorship opportunities, but we can't stake our claim on it because we don't have the evidence for that at the moment. All we can say is that if you're coming on a tier 5 visa, you're coming at a good time. And if you're coming on an ancestry visa, then obviously you've got permanent as well as interim options to look at. Now, another area to look at or to consider in the UK is hybrid working. So I don't know if this is the same in Australia and New Zealand, but hybrid working is a new modern way of the term in the office versus term at home. So typically roles are 2 to 3 days a week in the office and the remaining days to be worked from home. Now, appreciating that for some of you, being in the office is part of the draw of coming to London. So it is very feasible to achieve that. Typical working days tend to be Tuesday, Wednesdays and Thursdays. And in the City of London, in the West End, in Canary Wharf, now that offices have been back for quite a while, there is a real good buzz here. Lots of nice lunch places, bars and restaurants, and also some really good shops. Albeit, I have to admit, we're all working from home today because of a rail strike.
And tube strike.
A rail and tube strike. So hopefully we'll have progressed from the 1970s by the time you all arrive. But this is an anomaly. And because of COVID, when these hiccups happen, we're all really well versed and able to work from home. But today would have been our office day and we're all quite disappointed to not be there. Deb, can I hand over to you about the points you wanted to cover, please?
Absolutely. Well, I guess you're all obviously on this call thinking about heading to the UK, and the most important thing that's going to actually get you here is your eligibility for a visa. As Amy's already mentioned, the Tier 5, or what's now called the Youth Mobility Scheme visa, is the most common visa for professionals that we assist moving to the UK. And there has been a marked increase in applicants this year, even in the last 6 months. So if you had applied in January to come over for your Youth Mobility Scheme visa, your visa turnaround was likely to be 10 working days. That has certainly elongated. So I would encourage anyone who is thinking about moving to the UK and your visa that you're eligible for is the Youth Mobility visa to think about applying for it sooner rather than later. Current processing times are easily taking up to 6 to 8 weeks, not the 3 weeks that is being advised on the Home Office website. If you are applying for the Youth Mobility Scheme visa, you can apply for that up to 6 months in advance of your arrival. So we're now in June. If you're thinking you're going to arrive by the end of this year, then definitely it's something to get onto now. Visa processing delays are also applying to ancestry visas as well as UK passports, particularly if you are applying for a first UK passport. So I would suggest, if you are looking at those avenues as well, that you start gathering the information that you need to apply, because there's a lot more documents involved, and apply as soon as you have those to hand. These are renewable, like the ancestry visa is a renewable visa, as is obviously a passport, so you don't have to apply so far in advance before you come over. Something to keep in mind with both ancestry and Youth Mobility Scheme visas is there is an additional charge to the application fee, which is called an International Health Surcharge, or IHS. This applies to all visas, UK visas, and all applicants will need to pay for this, and it does cover the full period of your visa. So if you're applying for the Youth Mobility Scheme visa, that's a 2-year visa, and the current cost for the International Health Surcharge is £940. If you're applying for the ancestry visa, it is a 5-year visa, and even if you're not intending to stay the full 5 years, you will need to pay the IHS surcharge for the full 5 years, which is currently a total of £3,120 in addition to the application fee. So again, that's something to keep in mind when you're looking at applying for your visas. Assuming you're all got your flight booked and you're arriving here, one of the things that everyone's going to need to do is find a flat. Traditionally, Aussies and Kiwis have ventured and stayed in Clapham and Fulham, Putney, Shepherd's Bush and Acton, but other areas around London have become common in recent years, particularly Angel and Islington, Shoreditch, Hackney, Dalston. These areas often have like a lot of independent cafes and coffee shops and bars and restaurants, so perhaps a bit more trendier than some of the other parts of London. In terms of monthly rent, that really varies, but a sort of general ballpark range is around anywhere from £700 to £1,200 per calendar month for a room. You'll also just need to keep an eye out on whether the prices include utility bills and also council tax, which is rates, the rates equivalent in Australia and New Zealand. Amy's already touched on the hybrid working side of things, and that's also another consideration that no one ever really thought about when it came to accommodation, is what is your working from home space going to be like? So that's something else to think about when you're looking for flats. Perhaps go on other days where you're living in a house with 10 other people. Good places to start for your flat hunting are a website called spareroom.co.uk. That's quite a common one that Aussies and Kiwis tend to use. And if any of you are sort of keen to flat with other Aussies and Kiwis, the Kiwis in London Facebook weekly flat post is also a good starting point. You're also going to obviously need to open up a bank account when you arrive. We all want to get paid. In the past, we would have suggested you open up a bank account with an app-based bank, such as Monzo, before you actually arrived in the UK. But the UK has tightened their anti-monetary laundering legislation, and banks have tightened processes around that in recent months. So it's actually become more difficult to be able to open up a bank account while you're overseas before you arrive in the UK, and that's applying to all banks, even the app-based ones. You are needing to have picked up your BRP card, so your biometrics residence permit card, before you can actually apply for a bank account. And you're also needing a UK proof of address document, which we suggest if you've got a friend or a family member that you ask if you can change your address with your New Zealand or Australian bank to that UK address, just to get yourself settled and set up with a bank account in the UK. You're also going to need to apply for your national insurance number, which is the equivalent to your TFN number or in Australia, or your IRD number in New Zealand. Again, this is something you can only do once you have arrived in the UK and you have picked up your BRP card. Now, what's important to note is you can work without it, so you can start working without it, but you must get that process underway as soon as you can, once you've picked up your BRP card. Now, I think you've probably maybe picked up on the fact that your BRP card helps you establish yourself for a lot of things in the UK. So I would suggest as soon as you arrive in the UK and are able to pick that up, do get on to doing that. And the UK government and Home Office is moving towards digitalisation of sharing information. So even though you will have a physical BRP card in your hand, recruitment agencies, employers, landlords are increasingly needing to ask for what's called a Home Office share code, which will give them the ability to access online your immigration status. So you're going to need to provide this for onboarding processes, for recruitment, as well as for landlords to actually rent a property. So this is a reasonably new thing. So it's something that maybe your peers and friends who have come before haven't had to do, but it is something that you will all need to do as it comes into full effect from the 1st of September. So yeah, I think that's it for me for now, Amy, unless we have some other questions around this at the end. If anyone does, please just type the questions into the Q&A box.
That's lovely. Yeah, thanks, Deb. And then I think Dahlia is just going to talk about more on the what clients are looking for from tax professionals here.
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of candidates, and I guess aside from the tax technical training and experience, what are clients actually looking for? So what do they want out of their interim tax professional? Because I'd say the role in tax has changed and it has become more commercial. So clients are looking for candidates who can effectively communicate with stakeholders and liaise with finance teams or legal teams or treasury teams. So they are looking for people who can demonstrate an ability to communicate well, update your manager in terms of progress of work, spot opportunities within the tax technical work that is being carried out. IT, I think technology is becoming more and more crucial and important in tax. I think if you can demonstrate good IT and systems experience, that is a real advantage. Other than that, someone who's reliable, punctual, prepared to upskill and obviously learn tax from a UK perspective, because that's obviously important, that someone is adaptable and is able to sort of hit the ground running and pick things up quickly. When we talk to a lot of clients who have recruited for candidates from Australia and New Zealand, I'd say 90% of cases people have had very, very positive experiences. And I think sometimes it's the innate qualities of candidates coming across, the can-do attitude, high energy, ability to work well with different people. So I think generally it's extremely positive what we hear from clients. In terms of career progression, I think, over the time that we've focused on the interim tax recruitment market, I've seen a lot of people come from Australia and New Zealand, and I always will mention to candidates that when you first come here, you have to be realistic in terms of the role you're looking for, and it may be that it's a bit of a sidestep, or you are a little bit more flexible on the financial side, just to secure your first role in UK tax, because I think you still will, even though the differences with the tax systems are not huge and are in some cases fairly superficial, there is still a transition period. So what I would say is that if you come across and secure a 3 or 6 month role in UK tax, once you have completed that role, the premium is quite unbelievable in terms of what I have seen candidates move on to in terms of level of role and remuneration, because that sort of 6-month UK tax experience is really key, as I said, when you're looking for other roles. So I think it's about being realistic, albeit this is probably in a normal market, and at the moment there is such demand that you might find the pay rates are as expected, given there's obviously been an increase in light of sort of supply and demand. I think in terms of sorry, I was going to say, in terms of preparation for coming across to the UK, what would we advise you to do? I think, suggestions are looking at sort of an HMRC website on areas such as corporate tax for large businesses, and possibly on VAT, transfer pricing. It's always quite useful to look at the Big Four websites, because they do quite a lot in terms of changes or updates on the tax legislation. And often have seminars. So I think tax technical, it's good to just keep abreast of any changes. Big talking points at the moment are on Pillar 2 and BEPS. So if you're not already familiar with these concepts, then it'd be quite useful to read about them. For the corporate tax compliance and reporting tasks, the 2 main tax software that we find clients are looking for, Alpha Tax and OneSource. So again, it's quite useful to have a look over them both on the internet to see if there's similarities and features between those and the packages you are currently using. But that there's no need to obviously be able to use them, because you will be given training when you start an interim role, but it's just good to have an awareness and see the sort of similarities between the systems that are currently being used. And again, it's not essential to be well versed in the UK legislations, but having some knowledge on the similarities to your native system and appreciating some of the differences, I think will help an interview, because clients will obviously question transitioning and how easily you can pick up the UK tax side. But as we've demonstrated, that there's been lots of sort of positive experiences previously, and once this transition is made, it's easy to sort of build on that going forward. So I think hopefully that gives you a bit of an overview as to the candidate side and what clients are ultimately looking for.
Yeah, and just as when I emailed out last week, somebody did ask for just how transferable are the tax skills from Australia and New Zealand to the UK market, and just recapping on what Dahlia said, all we can say is very transferable. Because from what we understand, the foundations of Australian and New Zealand tax legislation is based loosely on UK legislation. Yeah. So there will be similarities or familiarity. Obviously, there will be differences, but as Dahlia mentioned, just being aware of what those differences are will mean that when you get into a role, you can upskill quickly and also address them in interviews. we're nearly to the end, but just one thing to mention around, obviously we appreciate people come from Australia, New Zealand, or the Southern Hemisphere that come to London, English speaking, similar, well, I guess cultures and legislation and career development opportunities. But obviously, we are on the European continent with just an absolute multitude of countries side by side, languages, food, cultures. It's just immense. And within Europe, we appreciate that people come to use London as a base and then do weekends away and holidays. And at the moment, Europe is open. The message in the UK is that we are living with COVID. We're not going to be restricted by COVID any longer. So there isn't mandatory mask wearing on transport or in shops, albeit if somebody does want to wear a mask, it's not seen as an anomaly now. But restrictions for travel have lifted, so it is a lot easier to just get on a flight on a Friday evening and come back on a Sunday or Monday and have a weekend away somewhere in continental Europe. So now then, in terms of next steps, after this session, we've got some questions which I will address, but after this session, if you are looking to relocate to the UK, clearly Deb is the person to get your to-do list in terms of visas and bank accounts. And no offense, but I'm quite glad I don't have to go through that admin. I was listening to you and I was like, that needs a flow chart. And then also, Dahlia, Richard and myself, we can be contacted with regards to tax queries and tax market queries. And we've got everyone's email addresses on there, but my email address has been sent out so far. If I can just go to the questions, if anybody has anything else they want to ask right now, please do so. But if I just open them up, we've got a question here on which experiences, qualifications are most sought after. Dahlia, you probably have more knowledge of that, but qualifications tend to be the CPA, don't they? And then any other experiences you can think of to mention?
No, I mean, I think if you are, you've got your sort of chartered qualification, your accounting or tax qualification, Big Four trained is obviously often looked, in a positive way. But other than the, accounting or tax qualification, Big Four in-house.
I should add also that if you want to do the aided, if you're in transfer pricing or international tax, a lot of UK international professionals do that course and it is recognized, yes, so that is transferable. And also if you're a qualified lawyer, that also does help.
Yeah, from a compliance and reporting perspective, having the CPA does help. But Dahlia and I have worked with people who've come over from the ATO, who obviously worked for the Australian Tax Authority and had a bit more of an advisory experience. And I remember placing such people into more like research roles or evaluation types of roles in transfer pricing or maybe transformation projects within teams. So the standard is, say, a degree CPA Big Four background, but we can look at different opportunities accordingly. The next question is, how broad is the tax recruitment boom? For example, does it include indirect taxes? Oh my word, it does include indirect taxes. If anyone out there has heard of a small thing called Brexit, then it's had a massive impact on indirect taxes and resulting customs. But there have been other large changes in the UK on something called MTD, which is making tax digital, and the indirect tax side was very much part of that. And then you've got obviously your services side of indirect tax and your goods side. But indirect tax is a massive area for us at the moment, Dahlia, isn't it?
It always has been. It's in demand, and there's obviously a smaller pool of candidates, and there's a lot of demand on the permanent side. So Amy and I have seen a large number of interim VAT projects come to market over Oh, sorry about that. Can you hear me? Right, over the last sort of 3 to 6 months. So if you have that indirect tax experience, then we will, we're pretty positive that we will be able to find something. But I think generally, you know, indirect taxes are as sought after as the direct tax side. So the demand is there in specialist areas across the board.
And more so at a sort of compliance level. So if you've got indirect tax experience where you've prepared returns for your domestic market and maybe for other countries, that's very transferable to having an EMEA type of role here in the UK. A lot of sort of balance sheet reconciliations, journal updates, but then through to just assisting businesses with VAT queries and transformations. A lot of UK business finance teams are updating their ERP systems, and that's having a massive impact on tax teams. So we're seeing a lot of process and system roles coming through, and a lot of that is mainly linked to indirect tax, but corporate taxes are being affected from that as well. Now then, question, do you recommend contacting BROMOS after visas are approved or prior? I would prefer to say after.
You can contact me at Armadillo prior, and we can certainly have a discussion and get things sort of, there's lots you can do in advance to your visa being approved. So certainly discussions around your CV, and perhaps if you're not thinking of coming to the UK for maybe a year or so, just finding out what you might be able to get yourself involved with in your work now that could make you more marketable, or your skills more transferable to the UK for when you do come over. So perhaps don't inundate Amy and Dahlia and Richard when your visa's not approved, or you're just thinking about it. You can certainly contact me and I can help provide some guidance around that.
Yeah, for us, it's much more useful to know when there is an arrival date. So even if you plan to go traveling before arriving in the UK, when we know that there's an arrival date, we can more work to that. But yeah, Deb is your person for the whole visa piece. Question here, how is the work-life balance? Are long hours part of the culture? I would say not. I mean,
no, unless you're look, sometimes within financial services or in certain industries there may be slightly long hours, but I would say there's a huge amount of flexibility, and I think hybrid working has meant that people are able to do more. You know, there's more flexibility, and I would say long hours doesn't seem to be hugely part of the culture unless it's maybe financial services or M&A. So M&A, which has gone obviously crazy at the moment, but certainly on the interim side, I would say you'll rarely have, it's a real exception to be working longer than your standard day.
Yeah, and a standard working day would probably be say 9 till 5:30 or 9 till 6. But yeah, there will be periods in a compliance cycle when there are deadlines that have to be hit. But then they are, and I'm certain that this is the same where you are in Australia, New Zealand. But then there are lulls at other times. So as long as the work is done and achieved, that's the main thing. But we're not in a culture where it is a positive thing to be seen to be working late into the night and showing your face type of scenario. On the in-house side, it's less like that in any case. So that there should be a balance.
There is balance, definitely.
And then we've got a final question. How simple is it to secure a subsequent interim role? For example, you complete a 3-month role, then wish to travel for 6 to 8 weeks. How easy is it to get a role thereafter? We've already touched on this, haven't we, Dahlia, in terms of the once you've gained UK experience in one position, it completely elevates your profile and recruitability into the next position. If you were to take a 6 to 8 week break, maybe it would be a case of take 2 weeks off and then start to maybe look at opportunities whilst you're traveling. But in the current market, I would say really easy. And actually, even in quieter markets, we've definitely worked with people, haven't we, where they've taken breaks.
Look, a large appeal on the interim side is obviously to do your assignment and then have a period off, or take the summer off, or travel. So we used to work on that basis. Look, the market moves quickly, so you know, again, as Amy says, as long as you're sort of contactable if need be a couple of weeks before you're looking to start, then it's very easy to do this.
And once Dahlia, you know, if somebody has worked through Dahlia and I, it adds weight to how we talk to our clients with regards to that person. But equally, the types of roles that you'd be looking at, maybe more on the compliance and reporting side, are in high demand at certain times in the year, and thinking about when someone might travel would probably be in those lulls. So I would like to think, obviously we can never overpromise, but I would like to think that it would be very achievable. Well, that's all the questions that we've got there, but you've got our email addresses, so please do let us know if you've got any other queries at all. And equally, I would be delighted if you could email me with just some feedback as well, because we really hope that you found this informative and interesting and has given you a nice taster really as to what it's like here, and we hope to see you soon as well.
Definitely.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening, good day.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a good evening.
Good
Thank you.
night.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.